What's up, guys? My name is Aaron. This is my boy Daniel, and this is the Work in Progress podcast.
Let's go. Official title.
We found a name. We like it. We hope it's not copyrighted, but it's ours for now.
It's not copyrighted. We were just inspired by Andy Mineo. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's cool. It's good. I think it describes the next generation. I think it describes me, describes him.
Definitely describes me.
And it captures everything that we're wanting to talk about and everything that we will talk about, and how broken we are, but how Jesus he's always working on us. So it's cool. I'm excited, man. How was your journey from the last podcast episode to now?
The journey of finding a podcast title was fun. I got to listen to a lot of Andy Mineo because we knew that was the vibe we wanted to go with.
Yeah.
And so just piecing that together was a lot of fun. And I think the cool thing about the idea of the podcast is it's just something that we're we're all being worked on. We're all in progress. We're not to where we're actually going to be.
Yeah.
And so, I'm excited about the direction it's headed. Excited for the first video that dropped. We actually had people that were like interacting with it and talking to us from our church that were excited about this stuff. And so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're excited.
No, I'm pumped, man. And it's really interesting when you put something on social media. Of course, when you put something that's related to your family or to your life, all the people that know you are going to be excited for it. But when you put something kind of creative out there, kind of not normally what you do, it's a little weird, right? Because you don't know how it's going to be reacted to. You don't know what people are going to think or say. And of course, you can't think about those things when you post it. But it was just really cool to see some of the feedback that we received.
Yeah. We want more.
Yeah, we want more. Let us know what you think of the name. If you have a better idea.
We haven't created anything besides a temporary logo. So it's not a big deal if we change it.
If you have a better idea, maybe you should start your own podcast. No, I'm just kidding. But let us know.
Or if you want to create a logo, we'll also take free media.
Logos.
Logos is great.
Logos
love that. Sweet. Yeah, but for real though, if you've got like feedback or you have topics that you think, man, would you guys talk about this or talk about this? Man, we'll take all of that. And again, like we said in podcast 1, we're not experts.
Yeah.
We're just having conversations, and hopefully we'll invite people into the circle who maybe do have a little more experience than we do. But this works better if you guys bring even more ideas. And so excited to see the feedback, excited to hear the feedback. Hopefully you guys come with it.
Absolutely. I've already been asked by my boy Danny. Shout out to Danny. He already asked me if he could send in some questions. So I was
go. Do it.
Let's go. Send them.
Send questions to Aaron.
Yes.
I'll give you his phone number if you need it.
I'll give you my personal phone number.
That's good. So last podcast, we talked about New Year's resolutions and how resolutions are kind of overrated and how you should focus a little more on like building habits, sustainable habits. And so taking that conversation, we thought something that we could talk about that, and you guys know this, if you're anywhere from the age of 18 to 30-ish, you know that one of the big things in that season of life is trying to figure out purpose. I think it's an age-old question, and are people still ask that because people still struggle to figure out what is my purpose. And so that's where our conversation is headed today. And so to kick this off, I literally want to ask you, Aaron, if someone was to come up to you and say, hey, what's your purpose? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think Aaron talking now and Aaron talking even a year ago would be totally different answers. And I'm actually excited about that. I'm pleased that that's the case because a year ago, like you asked me what my purpose was, and I think I would kind of get it blurred with my passions.
Yeah.
And what it was that I wanted to do for a living. I think that those lines get blurred quite often. And so now my purpose is honestly to just serve the Lord where I can. And I know it may sound like, no, not really, but it's hard and it's definitely not easy. I'm not perfect at it, but that is the purpose that I have. And that is the purpose that my wife has. And we talk about it and we keep each other in check with it because it's not always easy. Sometimes the conversation kind of drifts back towards selfishness.
Yeah.
And I think with this perspective change, it's actually shifted our whole life. It's flipped everything that might have seemed like a negative in the beginning and turned it into some of the best things that have ever happened to us in our lives. And so it's been really cool to see. And, you know, obviously we're just getting started. We're still works in progress, but it's been awesome, man. What about you?
Yeah, I think to echo back on some of that stuff, like you talked about, people get passions and purpose kind of confused and they get those like mixed up. And I think it's figuring out what your purpose is. And people oftentimes are like, oh, I don't know what my purpose is. I've been praying and asking for what my purpose is. It's like, if you actually read scripture, I think it's pretty clear what our purpose is. And so it took me a pretty long time to figure that out. I knew that. So before I started working at a church, I was actually a teacher and a coach, and you have to have real purpose if you're going to be a teacher and a coach, because that's probably one of the most incredibly difficult jobs that I could think of.
That's the Lord's work.
That is right. But if you were just going in with this, like if you were just passionate about teaching, or if you were just passionate about coaching, or if you're just passionate about students, there are going to be days where that passion is like runs out. And you're going to be miserable, and you're going to be angry, and you're going to be depressed. But when you actually realize that, no, you have purpose, and that purpose being to give God glory, then it changes everything, how you do everything. And so when I was thinking about this idea of purpose, I wanted to kind of just hone in on, there's several verses in scripture that talk about purpose. But I think one that for me is really, really clear and makes it really, really simple in thought, not necessarily simple in action, but simple in thought.
Yeah.
Is found in 1 Corinthians 10:31. And I'm sure you've heard this before. So whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it all for the glory of God, right? So when we're thinking about purpose, I think that's the lens where you start. No matter what you do, eating, drinking, working, living, dating, marriage, whatever you do, like it should be done for the glory of God. And when you realize that that is your purpose in life, it changes everything. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And to piggyback off of that, I think when you think of it through that lens, it even changes the work, the work you're doing, how well it's done, and just the emphasis that you put behind it to give the best product or the best end result. Right. And so it's definitely hard, and that's a struggle. And I find myself, you know, whether I'm at work getting a little bit lazy and I'm like, oh, well, that's good enough. And then you have these realizations where it's like, man, you think about that and you're like, man, is this glorifying God if I don't give this my all to the best of my ability? And then it changes like how you do the thing that you're doing. It's really cool. And I keep saying this, but it's tough. It's definitely tough, but it does.
I think one thing that want to clarify is that this is the main purpose, like, right? This is the big, like if you're spelling out purpose, this would be all the capital letters. Like your purpose in life is to glorify God. Yeah. And so often we find that we have these little mini purposes, which aren't necessarily bad things, right? Like being a great husband, or being a great teacher, or being a great volunteer. Like those are all great purposes. But if you are finding your full purpose in those things, they're going to let you down. Like you're going to get tired. You're going to get angry. You're going to start, you're going to have some depression. You're going to have these moments where you're like, God, I thought this was my purpose. Yeah. What is going on? Right. And so I'm not saying that those are great. Like those things that aren't sin, those things that aren't bad, those are great. You should do those things. Like you should work hard. You should, serve well. You should love people well. You should spend time with people. Like those are all good. But when those become your main purpose, it's the priority piece. It's where it gets off. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. So when we talk about this idea of passion and purpose, you've done a really good job of this. You talked about like in the past, like year-ish, you've done a really good job of taking things that you're passionate about, things that you've been gifted in, things that God has put like in your life that are really good, and said, how do I actually do this for God's glory? So would you just share a little bit about like what that looks like for you? Yeah, man, it's so interesting. And I'll just start from the top, man. So passions are, I love them. I love finding it. I love the idea that we've been blessed with something that we love so much that that we want it to take up all of our time and to get really good at something. And, at first mine was kind of not, what you'd think. I think
people now consider me like a media guy, right? Like photo, video, which is cool. But before that, it was something totally different, and it still remains in my heart as a passion. But it's like laughter. Like I thoroughly enjoy it. I have a burning desire and a burning passion for laughter, making people laugh, laughing myself, creating spaces where it feels okay to laugh and safe, even in the hardest of situations or the lightest heart of situations. It's what I love to do. I've been doing it forever, and you know, it's kind of like a family thing. My uncles, my aunts, everybody in my family is pretty dang funny, and it's just stuck with me, right? And so transitioning into like post-college, real world type of stuff, I found that like creating videos and photos, really videos, but like that is kind of taken over as my main passion. And it's been cool because that same guy that asked if he could ask a question, Danny, he actually kind of pointed me in this direction, helped me find this avenue for myself that I really didn't know beforehand. You know, like media and just really being creative is a passion of mine. And so, yeah, it's been really cool. And I think the cool thing is that I'm able to merge the two. I'm able to just like interact with people and be, you know, lighthearted and funny, but also be serious. And with that, I think I've been blessed with the opportunity to make people feel comfortable and okay to share, or to be comfortable in front of the camera, which is really helpful to me. And it's also helpful to make a better end result for them. And so, yeah, man, I think when I first started in the media world, it was hard, you know, and then like, I was like, man, God, I know I want to do this. I know this is something that I find joy in, and I find, you know, peace, like a place of helping others, but the work's not coming in.
Yeah.
What's going on here, you know? And I think shortly after Taylor and I got married, it kind of shifted to where I was like, okay, like now I have a family. I got to step this up. Maybe I should go all in. And so I started to do a deeper dive, and I realized that as I tried to get work and make a living, I was often saying, I'll serve the church when I have more time. Like I'll serve the church when I'm making X amount of money so that I don't have to worry about it, you know? And all of a sudden this kind of like light bulb clicked for me and Tay. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't have this ability to serve people in this way from my own doing. Like God has given me this gift, this ability. And so I started to dive in and serving where I knew I had talents and skills at with the church.
It's good.
Which was hard to do because obviously when you're not making much money and then you're doing work for free, it's not like ideal. But I think through that process and becoming more and more okay with it and using my talents to serve the glory of God, and not, you know, not the people per se, but for God's glory and for God's glory alone. And it was like a shift in everything. And all of a sudden I started to increase my income started to increase. I started to worry about it less. I had an influx of business. And it just kind of changed our world, man. And it's still to this day, you know, it's been had a positive effect. And, it's been really cool. And it's obviously I was fighting it really hard at first, you know, like you guys would have to pull my arm and pull my leg to get me to come take photos. But, I think it was one of those things where I had to do it on my own terms, you know, and then come to the realization that like, if I'm not using these gifts to glorify God, then they're, you know, not being wasted, but they're like, you know, they're not being served where they should be first and foremost, you know? Yeah. So
there's this, I remember an early conversation that we had where, Aaron and I get together once a week and do like discipleship, and we talk about life, and we do just kind of live life together. And so I remember a conversation that we had, and you were like, I want to figure out a way that I can use these gifts and like to serve the church. And so it's just really cool to see. It's not necessarily a full circle, because I think there's, like you said, we're still like in progress, and we're still being worked on, and there's still things that we can learn and grow in. But to see like somebody like you saying, hey, I've got these skills, I've got these passions, I've got these things that I've been blessed with. I want to go all in. Like I want to give my time. I want to give my talents. I want to give that stuff back to God. I want to do it all for his glory. It's really, really cool. And so I think that's a prime example of something that I know I've struggled with, something that I know other friends of ours that have struggled with. of, right? We get so caught up trying to figure out what is my purpose. Like we get so caught up trying to wait and be like, I can't do this because I'm waiting on a bigger purpose. Like I'm waiting on something bigger than serving in this capacity, right? We're always waiting for that actual big purpose that we actually miss out a lot of times on the purpose that we've got right here and right now. And so when you begin to shift, when you begin to think about, oh, my purpose is actually everything I do for God's glory, it actually changes how you do and live the everyday thing. I think it's important to talk about like seasons, right? We've all got these seasons of life. And so especially like when you're late teen, 20, early 30, whenever you're in that season of life, we have all these little mini seasons where we're in certain places. Like right, if you're in college, it's 4-ish years, you might be in a different city. Right after that, you go do your first job and you might move to a different city for a temporary moment, right? Or you get plugged into a church for a temporary season, or you do all these things and they're all like so temporary. And so oftentimes we miss out on living a full purpose because we're just waiting. We're waiting. And I think like hopefully the conversation today inspires you through scripture to know that, hey, our purpose is to give God glory, and you don't have to wait until that sign in the clouds comes out and says, hey, this is your purpose, because you've already been given your purpose, and it's to give everything you've got for God's glory right here, right now, whatever season you're in, whatever place you're in, whatever church you're at, whatever city you're in. Like you can go and you can do that right now. You can live it out.
It's so interesting, man. I think, the term all in, go all in is kind of becoming more of a, you see it more often in social media.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting because there's some merit to it. There's definitely, if you go all in on a goal, you're most likely going to achieve that goal. The thing is with this is when you go all in on serving and trying to find where you could give God glory in everything you do, it's weird because it almost seems like you're taking your focus off of the other things that seem important to you, putting it on God and how you can glorify him. But then God is God, and like all those things, like you reap benefits from that through God because he's blessing you. And it's just amazing because, like my story, for example, when I took my focus off the business aspect of it and I started using my talents to serve, everything on the other end started to become more blessed and more abundant, And so it's just really cool how
I think the point that like you're saying there is this action of surrendering, right? Like your purpose in life is no longer you focused. Like it's no longer about you. It's no longer about you building a business. It's no longer about what you thought your purpose might be. Like it's a full surrender of saying, like, God, my purpose is to glorify you. And so whatever that looks like, I may not know. But I'm all in. Like I'm literally surrendering everything. And I think when you get to that point, like that is Christian faith. Like that is living out your faith in a way where you're experiencing purpose. You're waiting on God to guide, but you're not waiting and just sitting on the bench. Like you're actually taking an active role in living out that purpose because you actually already know what your purpose is. It's to glorify. And so it's just an interesting, it's an interesting conversation because I feel like we just get stuck so often. Like we're just here waiting for the big moment, big this is my purpose, right? I think I actually had somebody not too long ago ask me like, well, how did you know that you were supposed to start working at a church? And it was just like thought where I started thinking back to all the little things that had to happen to get my wife and I here. Right. And if we were just waiting, if we had just been waiting for that one moment where the clouds parted and we had like the written message in the stars saying, hey, this is where you're supposed to go. This is your purpose. We would have missed the boat. Like we would have missed the train because we weren't we were just sitting and waiting. But instead we were, like we were talking about this last night in our life group, like we were just going as far as the little lantern that God was showing us to go. Like we had just a little bit of light in front of us, just a little bit of step, just a little bit of ways to go out. And every step that we took, we were doing those things to give God glory. And it leads you to this place where you're now looking back at the last, I don't know, it's going to sound old. You're looking back at the last 10 years of your life and you're like, oh, I was just living out the purpose that God had for me. And I didn't know what it exactly was.
Yeah.
here I am. And every day that we woke up, every moment that every decision we had to make was, okay, are we giving God glory in this? Mm-hmm. And look, he's provided, he's led us to this place. And so it's really cool. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. And one thing that I just want to clarify on my behalf is that, I'm not perfect in this.
No, none of us are.
It's definitely an area where I'm continually working at, but even just a little baby step that my wife and I have taken has made a huge difference in our lives. And we see that and we acknowledge that. And we're so grateful for that. And so it makes us want to strive to be better each and every time. And so it's like it's a good, one of the good cycles I have in my life.
Yeah. So as we like wrap up here, like if somebody who's listening to the podcast is like, okay, like I realize that the purpose of my life is to give God glory. Now what? Like now what do I do with that? Like what's a practical takeaway that like you would take from something like this, conversation like this?
Yeah, I think it looks a little different than just saying, God, I give you the glory, and then like going about your day the same way you were, right? I think it takes, like you said, that active participation. And so maybe you step into some of those things that you were avoiding before, like a life group, right? Like a life group or a mentorship or a discipleship type of relationship through people at your church. Maybe you get in touch with somebody that you trust in maybe a pastoral role or a leadership role that you can ask for guidance, because like we have these resources that we can use and ask help, And so that's probably the first thing I would do. If I'm thinking back about my journey, and it was a very, very, very slow progression for me, because I'd been going to Awaken for like 2.5, 3 years, before I decided to step in fully and attend these meetings with these like-minded men who are also struggling, and go to these life groups with people of all ages, all walks of life. And I think that was the first step for me, man, was getting plugged in and connected to where my feet were, where my roots were. And that for me was Awaken Church. And, whatever church that may look like for you, or whatever local connections you have, just plug in and kind of just step into that uncomfortability, because that was probably the first step for me, I'd say.
Yeah. I think the practical takeaway that if somebody were to ask me like, okay, like I realize now, hey, purpose is for God's glory. Now what? I think what I would suggest would be, first, purpose is how we do things, not necessarily what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Everything you do is for God's glory. So think through that mindset. Like think through that mindset in everything you're doing, whether it's applying for a job, dating somebody, picking a college, like whatever it is, like whatever you're doing, do it for God's glory. So how we do it, not exactly what we're doing. And then just think of that verse in Corinthians, right? Whatever you do it for God's glory. Whatever you do it for God's glory.
Get a tattoo.
And so go ahead, get that tattooed right on the forehead, and so that, or actually on your hand, I guess, so you can actually see it. Like, right. It's a simple reminder. It's that idea of like being in prayer, always seeking to do things that please the heart of God. I think that's it. Easier said than done, for sure. Like I said, we're not perfect at this, but it's something that you strive for every day.
Dude, I got a question for you before we wrap up here.
Oh man.
Question. Dude, so I think this is something that's important to talk about, but like, was it hard for you to step into your purpose or for your passions whenever you kind of had that inkling, like, oh crap, this is what I should be doing?
It's funny. We had a similar question like that at Life Group last night. And someone was like, well, was it like, it must've been like easy, or was it hard, or was it scary? And again, I think it comes down to like when you've walked the path of just a little bit of light at a time, like you're taking each step forward, knowing, hey, I'm going to pray through this, and I think this is what God has for me. It gives him glory. Like we're going to do it. I think those little steps, those little things, you're reminded that, oh, okay, God's in this. Like we've got this. Like it's not something that necessarily me or my wife had the strength or the power necessarily to do, but God had us the whole time, and we just trusted by faith. We lived out our faith. We tried to do things that gave God glory, and it's brought us to where we are now. So if I was to look back and somebody would have said 5 years ago, hey, are you going to be a pastor at a church in a suburb of Austin? I would have been like, no, that's not my plan.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't my plan,
Right,
but I
right.
think along the path of just committing, saying yes, living in that purpose that we're going to give God glory, we're going to give God glory, we're going to give God glory has brought us here. So it's not necessarily saying like you have to be working for a church full time or doing like it's whatever you feel that those passions are, wherever you feel that those gifts are that God is giving you, live those out, but be sure you give God the glory doing it. Like it's not something that's a boastful thing for me or for you. It's like, no, this is all God's anyways. I'm just going to give it back to him.
Yeah. And, yeah, man, you guys have been a really good example for that, for me and my wife. And so keep it up, dude.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Keep it up, sport.
I thought for a second there when you were like, oh, I had these passions. I thought you were going to say that you were trying to be a hooper. Like I thought that's what you were going to talk about.
Dude, no.
Not comedy. I thought you were going to talk about hooping.
I mean, I was at one point. I was going to go to the NBA, but I decided not to.
That's right. That's right. You're going to be one of the few Hispanics rocking the NBA. I like it.
Jeez.
I like it.
Right at 6 foot Hispanic. Can't jump or touch the backboard or the rim, but
that's right. Hey, before we wrap up, again, we just want to encourage you guys, man, have these conversations of with people that you trust, like people that are walking with you in life. And again, if you don't have anybody that you're walking in life with, maybe that's where you start. But have these conversations with them, people that are maybe older than you or have walked through a season of life that you're already walking through, and just have that encouragement, have that feedback, have those people to keep pushing you to seek God's will and to live out this purpose that we've been given. And I think you do those things. I think you'll find yourself more joyful, like living in a purpose that God has called you to do. You might find yourself a little bit less stressed and overwhelmed by, oh, I've got to do this, this, and this because this is the purpose. It's like, no, purpose is right here, right now. Give God glory. So do that. If you got any other comments, thoughts, suggestions, reach out to us, interact with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And, you know, Daniel works at a church. We're really close with our lead pastor and our other pastors, creative pastors and stuff like that. So if you are looking for a church, contact us and we'll help you find one where you are, or come.
You're always welcome here.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget to like this, subscribe to the YouTube channel because we're going to need some subscribers, and give us a follow for more good information like this. Hopefully it's good. I don't know if it's good, but
it's good.
It's authentic. So it's all
have a great week. We will see you, or you will hear from us very soon.
Yeah. We'll see you in the next one.
Later, guys.
See ya.